When we want to find out what the growth of rugby in the United States has been like and where do we see it going, we often want to hear the opinions from former professional players, coaches, unions, player associations and foundations. While we respect their thoughts on the state of the sport in America, it is also necessary to get a neutral perspective on the matter, which is why the Rugby Business Network has contacted journalist Brian Cole, who writes for the Rugby Wrap-Up, among other publications in the Tampa Bay area. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, firstly, Brian, you have obtained a master's in mass communications at the University of South Florida. So writing is obviously more than just a hobby for you. Could you tell our listeners for how long you have been a journalist, though?
Kind of started by accident. June 2011, I came across a website called The Examiner. They needed someone to write about the weather, so I kind of put myself in there, got my foot in the door, and then there's actually not a rugby column at all in any state of Florida, so I created the column to give our clubs more coverage, because obviously we were not getting coverage in local news and really nowhere in the state. We started with the rugby union, and then I went to started including schools from across Florida, and to incorporate women's rugby and youth rugby as well. That way I was covering everything. And rugby league is also growing quickly here in across the U.S. There are, I think, about 16 teams total. That's what I've done more about lately, although, as I said, I'm serving as press secretary for our union team, the Tampa Bay Crew.
Brilliant. Well, it's not a secret that rugby is not as popular as some of the other major sports like American football, basketball, and baseball. How did you get into reporting on rugby games and events?
I had a little bit of experience way back in 1996 playing with the LSU Rugby Club. The way I really got my foot in the door probably this way was I happened to run into one of the members of the Tampa Bay Crew not long after I moved to Tampa Bay, and almost 9 years ago, and I saw the shirt, and I had a little bit of rugby experience, and you don't see everybody wearing a rugby shirt every day. So he told me about game coming up, so I came to the game, and so I started being part of the team. And since nobody else was writing about it, I was like, I need to create a column to give our sport more publicity. So that's what I did.
Well, you saw the opportunity and you took it. That's fantastic. Well, when it comes to writing, Brian, you do branch out to other areas as you also report on politics, music, and even weather, as you mentioned. How does writing about rugby compare to those other topics you cover?
Writing about rugby is more enjoyable. It's more lighthearted, although most of the time music's very lighthearted. It's something that's missing here in the U.S., and something that people need to know and hear about. Obviously, people hear about politics all the time. Music, they probably do that, hear about that all the time as well. Weather, well, you see that every day, but rugby is something that never gets coverage. So it's definitely what I call recreational writing, something I enjoy writing and photographing. But I would also have to say that it's something that is missing in the U.S. media and needs more publicity. So that's why I enjoy writing about it.
Great. Well, Brian, from the articles and blogs you have written about rugby, what do you find is the most common theme when you speak to players and coaches, particularly if you have conversations centered around the current state of professional rugby in the United States?
Everybody agrees that it's growing. We all know here in the U.S., the NFL kind of takes precedent, although ratings are down some this year. A lot of the high schools here in Tampa, although there are some further down in Florida that cooperate, that they don't want to have a rugby club at their school. If you start people building up early so they can start learning the game, then they'll have more interest in playing the game and bringing the friends into their game. So it's kind of like a word of mouth thing is, hey, I'm playing this new sport. They say, what is it? I was like, rugby. I'm coming out to practice. So it helps to grow at that age. And then it's just a situation where you get to know people and they all agree that we have a long way to go, but we've also have made progress towards our goal. But there's a lot of work left to be done between when we reach here in our final point and getting the sport publicity and getting Americans to know more about the game, which once once they see the game, they'll regret not having known about it.
Well, you are on the ground in a literal and figurative sense when you attend games. In terms of the supporters that attend those games, what are the numbers like? And in your opinion, how long do you think we will have to wait before it could reach the numbers the other major sports get, based on the progress you have seen in rugby over the years?
We played last year, most of our games at Cascaden Park, and we played some in St. Petersburg. And obviously we had fans travel with the teams and fans that travel here. Now, one of my things is press secretary is to get the team more publicity so more people show up. Rugby league, we had a few more fans this year than last year. It's going to be a snowball effect. Problem is that snowball is really small. It's getting a little bigger as it rolls. To get it on the same level as NFL, MLB, NBA, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take some time. Maybe, hopefully, 15 years, but it's going up against the NFL, which is known for showing their tackling. I know it's something that we have to work somewhat against them. Although I will say the NFL has mentioned trying to build a rugby league system here in the U.S. We have the USA Eagles. That's our national team. And then we have some Super League teams. Obviously, the ones we're trying to get the most publicity, but they're still not getting nearly enough, are the Hawks and Super League. So, but I would have to say maybe 15 years. If we have a lot of hard work, maybe 12. One good thing I will say is that the USA and Canada are hosting the 2025 Rugby League World Cup between the two countries. That will help give us some publicity, but we have work we can do between now and then to get more people out.
Well, you mentioned a short while ago about Rugby Union League and Sevens, which touches on my next question. When we look at the Eagles team, which has only ever missed out on one Rugby World Cup, that being in 1995, from speaking with players in the past, do you get the sense that this is the pinnacle of rugby in America, or is playing for the national sevens and even rugby league teams also what players strive for?
Right now, rugby union is bigger than rugby league in the States. The Sevens team actually is part of the USA Eagles. It just happens to be they have their 15s team and their Sevens teams. As far as USA Rugby League Club, it's USA Hawks. The Eagles are spaced out of Colorado. They get the most publicity right now. I would have to say that's the pinnacle. A lot of the Sevens players come out of the 15s, and I honestly think in some ways the league may have more potential because of the fact that it has some similarities to U.S. football where you have certain downs instead of going. But I'd say the 15s Eagles side is the pinnacle play here in the U.S. at this time.
To follow up on that, for rugby to grow in the country at an even quicker rate, should more attention be placed on union and less on sevens and league? It is a bit of a cheeky question.
Well, I would say all three types of rugby help build the other three. There's kind of an inner working between the three. I believe that, yes, rugby union knows the most now. That we had in Brazil, we had a sevens club there. This year we will have a league team in the Rugby League World Cup, which starts later this month in Australia, New Zealand, and New Guinea. I wouldn't say you should sacrifice one over the other because all three build. Right now, the union's there, but when fans hear about union, they can also learn more about sevens and then about league. Sacrificing two for just one would be the best move. Yes, give union coverage, but also allow fans of union to learn that there are other types of rugby besides the basic 15s game.
A very sensible approach to take. While many rugby-loving fans from around the world will generally only get to see the Eagles and Sevens teams play their games when they are televised, you obviously get to see all sorts of games from college and amateur to professional and also across the different codes by living there in America. What do you believe is perhaps lacking from players and even coaches to be able to compete on the same level as the bigger nations such as New Zealand, Australia, and even England, to name a few?
Obviously, our biggest issue here in the U.S. is U.S. football. When athletes graduate from high school, they don't get scholarship offers to go to college or university and play rugby. They get the scholarship offers to play U.S. football. Then you may have some people that play rugby, but you have the football players that are making millions of dollars a year, and there are some schools in the U.S. that offer scholarships for rugby. However, that's not what you see on TV. That's not what majority of older children and younger adults have experience playing. So that's something we work against here. Everybody's centered on college football, and that's what gets the money, and that's what gets on TV. And because of that, it's a struggle here we have in the States that other countries don't have. That's the biggest thing it's inhibiting the growth of the sport here.
Very interesting indeed. Well, what do you feel needs to happen for rugby to match the level of the top-tier countries at the World Cup and in other international competitions, considering that the population size of the USA is far greater than pretty much all of the other rugby-playing nations out there? Where is more support needed, and who should be providing that support to take rugby in America to the next level?
We need more media coverage. That's one thing. Yes, we do have a bigger population, but with the lack of media coverage, not a whole lot of people know about the sport. Some people do, but some people are so ingrained into U.S.-style football that they're like, let me just stick with this, even though rugby is actually more interesting than football in most ways. They're attracted to what they know, and it's like they don't want to, break away from what they know to try and learn something new. That's one of the things we have to do. We have to build up our media coverage. A lot of these young men and women know the money is there for the NFL and the scholarships are there for college football. Until we can get enough media coverage where they see rugby as a viable alternative, which it really is, but we just don't have the coverage to show it, it's going to be difficult to compete against U.S.-style football.
Definitely. Well, finally, Brian, for you personally as a journalist and a writer, where would you ideally like to work in rugby, and how could the members of the Rugby Business Network try and assist you in making that a reality?
Well, right now I'm based out of Tampa Bay. I don't see myself moving from here. One thing that could happen is, I've actually at times considered going someplace where rugby is bigger. Probably, I guess you could say Sarah Rugby University here in the U.S. would be out in Colorado where the Eagles are. Rugby League has a lot of ties in the Philadelphia area, but building the sport from the ground up is part of the process. I know that the Toronto Wolfpack is the first rugby league club in North America that's competing internationally against teams in the UK. So maybe that would be the ideal space. I don't know. Right now I'm just here in Tampa Bay. It's just wherever would be a place where I can greater promote sport. We have a lot of ties here to Tampa, and we have helped grow rugby here in the state of Florida. But understand that in order to actually make as a rugby reporter, I would like to have to move to a place, whether it be in the U.S., North America, or as I said, Toronto. So obviously there are other places in the country or North America that would provide better opportunities for someone as a rugby reporter.
Well, if any of our members are listening and they do have connections to help your career expand, I'm sure they'll get a hold of us. Well, Brian, it has been an interesting and worthwhile opportunity to get the opinions from a neutral rugby journalist providing some insight into rugby in the United States and where more attention needs to take place to allow the sport to grow bigger and faster. Thank you for chatting with us at the Rugby Business Network, and we wish you all the best for your writing career ahead.
All the best to you as well.